Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Sint.
We are continuing to work our way through Hollow Knight and discuss the Lord of the Flies.
Just Lord of the Flies. There's no the.
Gotcha.
Okay, there's the, but it's not the. You know what I mean? There's not a the at the start.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, we ended the last discussion with the mention of the arrival of the rescuing pilot. And you have the book on hand since I'm playing. If I remember correctly, he sees the boys all stranded on the island and makes a comment along the lines of, "Oh, this is just like something. I don't remember what."
Coral Island.
Do you know what Coral Island is?
It's a book.
Alright. Do you know anything?
According to Wikipedia.
Okay.
Yes, I was going to read off the Wikipedia. The Coral Island, A Tale of the Pacific Ocean, published in 1857, is a novel written by Scottish author R.M. Ballantyne. One of the first works of juvenile fiction to feature exclusively juvenile heroes, the story relates the adventures of three boys marooned on a South Pacific island, the only survivors of a shipwreck. A typical Robinsonade, a genre inspired by Defoe's Robinson Crusoe and one of the most popular of its type, the book went first on sale in 1857 and has never been out of print. Among the novel's major themes are the civilizing effect of Christianity, 19th century imperialism in the South Pacific, and the importance of hierarchy and leadership. It was the inspiration for William Golding's dystopian novel Lord of the Flies, which inverted the morality of the Coral Island. In Ballantyne's story, the children encounter evil, but in Lord of the Flies, evil is within them. In the early 20th century, the novel was considered a classic for primary school children in the UK and in the United States. It was a staple of high school suggested reading lists. Modern critics consider the book's worldview to be dated and imperialist, but although less popular today, The Coral Island was adapted into a four-part TV drama broadcast by ITV in 2000. So, that's just the background on it, but that probably tells you enough of where it came from.
Yeah. So basically, it's the exact same genre as Lord of the Flies, or at least as Lord of the Flies appears to be, crud. But with a completely different result.
Yep. And the thing is, Golding kind of had some experiences with, life kind of sucking. As he served in World War II. He took part in the Normandy landings on June 1944 and at Lokeren in the Netherlands, where his boat was one of only a few to survive an Allied assault on the heavily defended island. As John Carey notes, memories of Lokeren haunted him for the rest of his life. Golding's war experiences caused him to question the roles of good and evil in the world and to examine humanity's capacity for violence, two important themes in Lord of the Flies. He recalls his experiences at sea on the Galatea as misery, humiliation, and fear. And he believed the lessons to be learned from war were about the nature of humanity rather than about nationalism and competing or political or economic ideologies. One had one's nose rubbed in the human condition, he explained, and he came to realize that both sides of the conflict were capable of terrible acts of violence and cruelty. These things, he explained, were not done by the headhunters of New Guinea or by some primitive tribe in the Amazon. They were done skillfully, coldly, by educated doctors, lawyers, by men with a tradition of civilization behind them, to beings of their own kind. Man produces evil, he concluded, as a bee produces honey. So, having been a teacher, he had to, read and assign books like The Coral Island as well. And it did not match up with what he had observed of humanity while serving in the war. So, yeah. To use a biblical analogy, humanity was not an innocent in the garden, corrupted thereafter by civilization. Rather, humanity always had the capacity for evil, and civilization could be a way to temper that inherent trait. Golding believed, for example, that only certain social sanctions or social prohibitions separated the Allies from the Nazis. These were taken from an introduction in one of the editions that I had in the classroom, as I was giving the kids some background information when we read it this year. These were controversial ideas, and he pondered how he might express them in a work of fiction. As a youth, he had read Ballantyne's *The Coral Island*, about a group of young castaways on a Pacific island. But what might happen, Golding wondered, if evil was within. He had observed how soldiers, many of them youths or barely out of their teens, had behaved in the war. How might then a group of civilized Western youths really behave if cast away and left to their own devices? So that's where we get Lord of the Flies from. The books of surviving on an island and bringing inherent goodness of civilization to the island and saving people and generally showing them what for and la 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 la. But humanity itself might not be as pure and good as fiction wants us to believe, having seen how war crimes happen. He wanted to write something that might be a little truer to what he saw as the human condition. And therefore, we get Lord of the Flies, where order quickly breaks down after an abortive attempt at civilization in favor of raw power, blind authority, and just cruelty. But the actual note I had put down for this episode was as seen on TV. Because there is a strong tendency of children to want to imitate the fiction to which they are exposed. And it's not just the naval officer at the end who mentions Coral Island. It's the first observation basically made by the boys when they land on it. They've all read the book. Yeah, this is going to be just like Coral Island. It's going to be great. We're going to have fun together. We're going to survive on this really nice island, and it'll just be until we get rescued, and it's going to be great. It is not, in fact, great. You should not always emulate things you see in fiction. In fact, you rarely should.
Do not try this at home.
Well, the thing is, they're not at home, so that wouldn't work. But
you know what I mean.
Yeah, but don't do it is the thing. I always use the analogy of that one kid who's not allowed to watch wrestling because they'll hurt themselves and get everybody else unable to watch wrestling?
Yeah.
I think we have an island of those kids.
It wasn't wrestling for us, but yeah, we had those kids too.
Yeah, that's most of the kids on this island, because they clearly do not have the first clue of what they need to be doing. They're just led around. We never even learn the names of most of them. We don't even know how many kids are on the island. We just have a whole little horde of them. We learn the names of 3 of the little ones, and about 6, maybe 7 or 8 of the older kids, but the rest are just the hunters.
Yep. We have Ralph, and we don't even learn Piggy's real name. We just have a nickname for him. But we have Ralph, Piggy, Simon, Jack, Sam and Eric the twins, and Roger.
And Maurice.
And Maurice, and then the handful of little ones.
Yep. So we only get a handful of the kids named, and they're just the ones who tend to stand out the most. So who's to say what everybody else is doing? Is it just those that are among the biggins? How many little ones are there? How many other hunters are there? There's clearly enough to be a small army dancing around the fire. But
I believe it says at the beginning that the hunters were made from Jack's choir.
Yep.
So I have a feeling that that's something that's a bit lost in translation for us, because I imagine schools of the era would have had these choirs, and they would have been able to make that comparison to their fellow students, and would probably have an idea of how big these choirs tend to be.
Possibly, but I think it might also just be a case of it's not as important as we think it is, because
that's also true.
What's important here is the theme of being unable to actually survive in this situation that popular fiction of the era insisted, no, you'd be fine. See, you're good British boys. You got this. Head pat. No, you clearly do not have the first clue about what you're doing, and you can't just fail your way into success. Dysentery doesn't care. And they have that. They've mentioned a lot that little kids don't understand the concept of ripeness, so they just eat unripe berries and then have bad times in the bathroom.
Yep, it's just part of life for them now. To the point where they don't even complain about it anymore.
Yep. So, sometimes you get works of fiction like this that are just reactions to other fiction. Like, how many times have we seen people cut together clips from Twilight and Buffy in response to Twilight?
I haven't seen that. I have seen the meme that was floating around the late 2000s of Edward and Bella sitting together, and then in the background you can see Blade.
You know, someone cut together a whole, I think it was like a 10-minute almost thing of just, clips of Edward being awkward and creepy and Buffy getting ready for battle, to the point where they even used the part from Goblet of Fire so they could get a dead Robert Pattinson to be staked. Yeah, so it's not an alien concept to make a reactionary piece of media in response to something that made you just go, no. But yeah, this is kind of an odd one because at the time of Lord of the Flies publication, Coral Island was almost a century old. So it had been around for a while. But I think this was basically the first responsive no, children are not as innocent as this book paints them to be. This is not going to go the way you think it's going to go. This is how it would actually go down. Because children are just people, and people are awful. Golding needed a hug.
And I do believe we have, at one point, had real-life evidence of how this turned out.
And I think it was a little bit between the two,
It wasn't nearly as bad as Golding said it would be, but it wasn't idyllic by any means.
Yeah. Yep, happened in 1965.
Oh, that's more recent than I expected.
Yep.
Oh. It's these guys again.
In the October 6, 1966 edition of Australian newspaper The Age, a headline jumped out at me: Sunday showing for Tongan castaways. The story concerns 6 boys who had been found 3 weeks earlier on a rocky islet south of Tonga, an island group in the Pacific Ocean. They had been rescued by an Australian sea captain after being marooned on the island of Atta for more than a year. So yeah, it went a lot better for them.
I really hope this is not a boss fight in the dark.
But then again, we're basically just breaking our characters down into archetypes here, which is why it's a little bit easier to see why there's a complete breakdown. Plus, maybe, when you're actually in that situation, you might be more willing to put your ego aside, unless your name is Jack. Because that's basically been the driving force for the whole thing. But, yeah, they keep trying to do all these things that they need to do to survive, but aren't able. We see this for, the first 3.5 chapters with Jack taking the hunters and trying and failing miserably at being the hunter, the role he chose for himself. He can't do it. They get a pig, and he can't bring himself to kill it. He just can't do it, even though he knows they need meat. They need to do this. He wants to be capable of doing this. He's not able. And he feels great shame for not being able to do this. And this basically drives his entire character for the whole book is, I need to be stronger and more ruthless so I can kill the pig. And once he's able to kill the pig, all bets are off. So, yeah. Putting yourself in a situation where you're trying to be something that just because you know this is how the story goes, it puts a strain on you. It puts everybody at risk. He gets so obsessed with doing the thing that he's told himself he's going to do because they need to do it, that he neglects the other duties of, tending the fire to get them off the island, so it's not necessary that he has to be able to do it. To the point where he stops caring about the fire at all, because he doesn't care about being rescued. He just wants to be in charge.
And that's what leads to the death of several of the other kids. Or at least 2 of the other kids.
Yep.
Which,
so, to be fair, we're not sure how many little ones they lose. We know of 1, but they never really had a firm count on them.
Yep. They only really mentioned this one because he had a distinguishing mark on him.
Yep.
So he was easy to remember.
But yeah, I mostly just wanted to bring up the influence of Coral Island and where the idea for the book came from, because it kind of helps to have that context. Otherwise, why do you just sit down and write a book about a bunch of kids killing each other? Because you've read this book one too many times, you know it's not reflective of what you have observed of humanity, and you've seen some pretty heinous stuff going down in your day, and no, you need to get some feelings out about people. While we have civilization to restrain us, can be guided to be inherently good. But without consequence, there are many who do not hold to that conditioning. So...
This room is annoying.
Yep. I don't really know what else to say, so this might be a bit of a short episode.
I mean, it's 17 minutes, so...
Okay, that's good.
We will see you all next time.
Bye.